Hello everyone. So last week I gave a talk at the Solid Symposium in London. It was in the session Achieving Adoption of Solid at Scale, and I talked about the underestimated challenge of pods hosting. And since I don't know how well went the recording of this talk, and because I don't want to forget what I told, I'm going to record it again here. So my name is Sébastien Rosset. I found about Link Data, Solid, and ActivityPub about 8 years ago. I created ActivityPods, a free software you may have heard about that combines the ActivityPub and the Solid protocols. And in the past 2 years, I've been quiet because I founded a cooperative called Reconnection that seeks to foster the rise of what we call the universal social network. So, what is the problem? What are we going to talk about? First, I want to say that very often when I was talking about the advantage of Solid and activity pods, I was often telling to developers that basically with Solid, a lot of things rest on pod host, all the storage of data and so on. And there are some very nice development framework. So in the end, if you want to build application, then with Solid, it can become very easy and straightforward. But we can see this in another way to say that, well, a lot of things rest on pod host. And so if this hosting does not work, then the whole Solid advantage will fall apart. Um, I will talk a bit about Mastodon because the problem that we will encounter with pod hosting if many people start using pods, it's going to be these problems are going to be very similar to what is happening right now with Mastodon. And since Mastodon has millions of users, then it's interesting to look about the problems they are dealing with. And the bad news is that in many ways, the problems that Solid will encounter will be much worse than those that Mastodon encounters right now. So what's the problem? What are we talking about? Basically, when a user wants to join the Fediverse and create a Mastodon account, the first thing they will need to decide is what host they want to choose, where they will go in the Fediverse. And this question is not easy because it includes many other questions. Let's take the first one, question of trust. Basically, do I trust this host to see all my data, to be able to act as me on the Fediverse and so on? Because, right, we don't trust the GAFAM, but do we trust any random host? Well, it's not so sure. For Mastodon, it's not a big deal because basically it's all about public tweets. And so basically almost all data are meant to be public. So you don't care so much that your host can see them, right? And for direct message, it's another issue. But right now they are trying to add end-to-end encryption to these direct messages. But for the rest, it's okay. But for Solid, it's much worse because we are talking about using it for banking data, for health data, and so on. And so it's very private data. And so, well, do you trust any random host to see that data? Well, I don't know if you do. But still, for me, it's not a very big problem because in society, this society relies on trust. When you go to a restaurant, you expect the cook not to put poison on your food, and there are many other places in society where there is trust, and we could almost say that there is no society without trust. And so, in my view, we could imagine that basically the Solid project could work if within a network of trust. And we could imagine that basically you would choose a host that is close to you physically, or maybe because it's someone you know very well, and so on. And so it could work. I mean, maybe a local association and so on. And really, if you don't trust no one, well, you can always host it yourself. So for me, this question was not so bad. But there are other questions. The other question is, do I trust this host that maybe is my best friend? Do I trust this person to protect my data against hacker? Well, that's a more difficult question to ask if you're not yourself very good into computer security. And so it brings the question of data leaks, because these are the data leaks that happen the past decade. And this decade, these are the data leaks that happen. It's getting worse and worse, in fact. The French, in France, almost all the French government agencies have been hacked. Well, maybe not all, but people are starting to think that every one of them is going to be hacked soon. And so it's become a big deal. And of course, for Mastodon, it's not such a big deal because, well, who would care about the Mastodon mix, because almost all the data are already meant to be public, so who cares? But for Solid, it's very different because possibly you are going to have all your data in the single place if really Solid works. And we know that for people who want to attack you, to harm you, the more data they have about you, then the easier it's going to be for them to do complex attack scheme. And so, if Solid works, if we start having millions of users who put all the data in a single place, well, it's going to be a very attractive target for hackers. So, well, we need to be very careful about this. And this brings another question: is this just going to offer good maintenance? It means, for example, are they going to upgrade regularly the software? And question of upgrade is very important for security, because we know now with artificial intelligence tools like Claude Mythos, it may become very easy to find security holes in software, and so it's going to be very easy, important to upgrade your software very very quickly. And also, if us don't upgrade for like many years, then there is also the problem of protocols, because the protocols may evolve. And how are people on a host that is on an old protocol going to communicate with people who are on more recent protocol, or with application? Well, this whole question of protocols and breaking change in the Solid ecosystem, I think it could also become some kind of nightmare at some point. I will not get into that subject now, but I think it's something also to consider, by the way. Anyway, there is a fourth thing to consider is long-term commitment. Basically, will this host, how long are they going to be around? I said here, I wrote 10 years, but for Solid, possibly you have all your data in the same place, so probably you want them to be there all your life. And well, since you cannot really guarantee that host will be here all your life, then you want at least to be able to move your data easily elsewhere. So we are talking about migration here. And migration, it's not an easy thing. I'll take the example of Mastodon. Mastodon did a lot of really good things to ease the move from one host to another. So basically, your profile and all your contacts are going to be transferred to the new host. Your follower will be warned of your new address, so they can update their own data. And a redirection will be set between your old profile and your new profile. But there are limits to that. First, posts will not be transferred, because possibly you may have thousands of tweets, and they are all intertwined with other tweets as replies, as reposts, and so on. So if we needed to update all the posts that have been put on all these possibly thousands of servers, and it can be a real nightmare. And that's why Mastodon doesn't do it. And also another problem is that if a server suddenly disappears, then, well, basically you lost your data and you will have no way to warn your followers that you have now a new account on another host. And even if your host warn you beforehand that they're going to shut down like in 6 months, well, as soon as they really stop, then you lose the redirection on all your old posts. So I would say that the concept of federation is great when portability is granted. And the problem for Mastodon as well as for Solid is that we use URI with domain name for all to identify every resource. And that's a big problem because it means as soon as you move somewhere else, basically every single resource needs to be updated. And that can be complicated if you have possibly millions of resources on your pod. So we see that these problems that we're talking about, they are very big for Mastodon because the first thing that you do when you want to join the Fediverse is you need to think about this. You need to do the right choice of server. And very often when I was talking about Mastodon and so on, people usually say, well, the thing that really bother me is choosing this server. And I would say, well, just choose one. It's okay. It's not so difficult. But in fact, when you look about this in details, we see that it's indeed a very difficult question that has very long-term consequence. And it's the same with Solid. Right now, we are just playing with Solid Server as developers. But if at some point we need to choose a server to say, okay, that's going to the place where I'm going to put all my data, the more sensitive data, and so on, then you're probably going to think a bit longer about which server to host. Okay, so that's the point of view from a user, but there is also the point of view from a host, which means all the question we are putting here, it's also question, basically, it's also things that hosts are going to worry about. And another thing that we didn't talk about is liability, because I don't know if you noticed, but the more time goes, the more burden there is on host. I mean, the more legal requirement there is. Here's some of the things that exist right now. For example, as a service provider, you need to collaborate with the police. With the GDPR law, you need to provide or erase user data as soon as they request it. You need to remove illegal content within 24 hours. If you're already a big application or a big host, you need possibly to pre-screen all your content for copyright infringement. If you host sensitive data, like for example banking data, this is the example that is often used in Solid. Well, there are very strict security measures that you need to comply. And finally, in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of talks about the fact of that we need to verify the age of user because the problem with minors and social networks and so on. And this, in France, they want to apply this to all social networks. So possibly Solid could also be touched by this kind of law. So in the end, we see that pod hosting is difficult. It's a big responsibility to host someone else's data. And we can say in many ways it cannot be done in an amateurish way. So the dream I was talking about of this small village of people who trust each other, who host each other's data, well, if really so it takes off, everyone starts using pods and so on, that probably it's not going to happen, unfortunately. And most probably we're going to have this reality with big provider who will have full access to all the data of their user. And so when we look at this and we say what is the difference with the current state with Google, Facebook, and so on, it's just going to be other actors. They will still have full access. And if they fail, even if they are very big, they fail at protecting you from data leaks, then it's going to be very big and very harmful data leaks that will come about. So, is there a solution? Should we just give up with the solid project? Well, maybe stay on centralized server. We know there are many problems with that, but at least, well, it's somewhat working. So, well, maybe we can just stop here and decide that things are not so bad right now, right? Well, fortunately, I think there are solutions, but for me, the key solution is encryption. Because there is this saying that all data stored in plain text will leak sooner or later. So basically, if something is not encrypted, well, it will come out and people will be able to steal it. And it's the same for solid. But adding encryption is not something that can be done very easily. It requires a whole new architecture and a whole new way to think about this. Because we are not just saying, okay, you have your data, okay, we'll encrypt it, and that's it. No, because the host cannot have the decryption key. It must it's only the user that must have this. Um, we cannot just say also, okay, I'll just encrypt my data, put them on the host, because then how do you do to share this data with other user? They need also the key to decrypt it, and so, well, if we look about this, you see there are lots of difficulties to make encryption work. But fortunately, there is a solution that has come out. Nico made a presentation this morning in the morning of my talk at the Solid Symposium about NextGraph. Um, so I will talk briefly about this solution and why it could possibly solve a lot of problems. So NextGraph is there's many keywords that are associated with NextGraph, but the first one, I think the most important, is local first, the concept of local first. The idea is that basically you create your pod, your storage, and you do that on your device. You don't do that on a server. You do it on your device, and then you encrypt it. You encrypt your data, and you send them to a broker. A broker is a name for in NextGraph for server. And why do we need to do that? Why do we need to encrypt to send this data in your broker? Why not keep it only on your device? Well, there are some issue with that, because basically if you have several devices, for example, let's imagine a laptop and a smartphone, then probably you want your data to be synchronized between your device. And also, if your phone is stolen, then you're probably happy to be able to get back your data in some way in your new phone. So with NextGraph, basically all you need to get back your data is what it's called your wallet. It's your keys, and with your keys, you are able to get back all your data that is stored in the broker. And finally, this broker is useful if you want to collaborate with other people on the internet, uh, because well, because because you cannot the peer-to-peer exchange, it does not work in real life, because it requires all users to be online at the same time, and very often it doesn't happen. So with a server, basically you can send data, and when the user connects, then they will get it. And also with Nextgraph, you will be able to collaborate on the same documents in real time and all that. So we see that in this new architecture, brokers are very easy to host because they only transport and store encrypted data. So basically, it's not so difficult to do. It's very similar to hosting blockchain nodes for those who know about it. Secondly, because Nextgraph uses the DID scheme, URIs are not bound to a domain name, so user can easily move their data to another host. So if you decide to stop your brokers, then it's not a big deal for you users. They will be able to find another home, and it will not impact them. And finally, if your server burns, well, it's not so bad also because because all the data are replicated on other brokers, and so user can just switch to another broker and it's fine. So with all this, we see that Nextgraph solves elegantly all the problems we raised in this talk. Trust and security because well, encryption guarantees that by design. Liability also in some way, because if you don't know what's happening on your server, you cannot be held responsible. And of course, also long-term commitment, because you can easily stop your broker and it's not going to affect very badly all your users. And in some way, if we get back to that picture from the beginning, we see that with Nextgraph, it's like we solve the problem of host, because it's like they are not here anymore. It's just some machines that are exchanging data, but they don't have all this weight on them. So as a conclusion, I would say that the Solid community should look more into Nextgraph and see what can be done to ease its integration in the ecosystem. So with Nextgraph, and I'm also part of this, we're trying to make it easier to get Solid compatibility, but there are also some things that Solid needs to do because basically with Nextgraph you don't have HTTP, so you need to do things differently, and so possibly the Solid specification would need to adapt to give either you use HTTP or you use another method. And there are other issues. For example, right now with Solid, you are forced to that the URI includes the name of the container, for example, and that's not possible with Nextgraph. But this one is a very small one, but still, it's a kind of enforcement that, in my opinion, are not necessary. If it went away, then it would be easier to make it possible to have a full compatibility between Solid and Nextgraph. Well, that's it. Very happy to have made this presentation. Have a look at Nextgraph, and yeah, you can also look at our website reconnection.com. Except that right now it's in French, so maybe you will not get much information about that. Thank you very much.